Welcome to this video on the 5 steps of the Examen. The Examen comes to us from Saint Ignatius, and the 5 steps we'll be examining today come from the Ignatian Spirituality Packet that you've already read and my own explanation. The first thing to know is there are many different ways to break down the Examen. So if you look it up on the internet, you may see different wordings or explanations. They all have the same idea and follow the same general flow. But for the test, I want you to memorize these 5 words as the flow for our Examen: gratitude, grace, review, repent, resolve. When it comes to explaining these terms, you can either use the explanation from the Ignatian Spirituality Packet, which I will cover in this video, or you can use my own explanations, whichever makes the most sense to you. For each step, I will list the step itself at the top, how the article describes it, and how I describe it. I've also included some images so that our more visual learners can maybe remember those to help out here. So our first step is gratitude, and just as important as each step is the order these things come in. So, the Examen asks us to start by thanking God for all of our gifts. Nothing would exist, we would not be here without God. And Ignatius teaches that everything is gift from God. And so I've got a picture here of saying thank you in sign language. And then the other 2 images have to do with 2 stories that I like to use to think of this first step. And they're reminders that when we thank God for gifts, we should always thank God for the big things, but for the small things as well. So my first story has to do with the picture of the bagel. And this comes from my own life story when I was in high school. So come along with me on this journey and imagine that one day I had one of those bad days where, nothing goes right. Nothing really bad happened that was like big, but just a lot of small little things that leave you at the end of the day saying, ugh, there isn't much in my control in life, but I'm going to really go into my next day. And when bad things happen, I'm going to say, what can I learn from this? I'll set everything aside, and then I'll focus on the good things, no matter how small they are. So the next morning, I had a really good bagel for breakfast. My mom got it for me from the Great American Bagel Company, which is no longer in this area, though I have found it at a few airports. And I had that good bagel for breakfast and proceeded to have an even worse day. Again, nothing big, but just small thing after small thing. And I would kind of grit my teeth and say, as each bad thing came along, what can I learn from this? Set it aside. And then I would go back to what was good about my day, which was pretty much, I had a good bagel for breakfast. And what I learned from that is, we should thank God for everything in our life, even if it's as small as having a good bagel for breakfast. We should also thank God for the big things in our life. And this story is not originally mine. I'll tell you who told it to me at the end of the story. But this story is about someone who was digging in a field and he found a pearl. It was worth a great price. So he buried it back in that field, and he spent all his money buying that field so that he could get that pearl of great price. And that pearl represents the things in our life we can't live without. could be family, could be being grateful for our education or having a home or food on our table. Those big time things that we sometimes take for granted. I got that story from my friend Jesus. You might have read about it in the Bible. So step 1 is about gratitude, thanking God from little things to big things. That's where we start. Next is grace. And in the article, this is described as the courage to see clearly, or I like to think as God sees. And the reason this is next is because it's preparing us for step 3. So I like to think of this as putting on our God glasses. I wear glasses, and so when I'm not wearing them, I can't see very clearly. And so when we put on our God glasses, we're preparing to look at our day, but we want to see it as God would. And what that means is we don't want to be too hard on ourselves, but we also don't want to be too easy on ourselves. As we're about to examine our day and see how things went, we don't want to give excuses saying, oh, well, I did some bad things, but other people do worse. And at the same time, we don't want to go through our day and only see the bad stuff and not be willing to see the good things we've done. So we ask for the grace to put on our God glasses, to look at our day honestly, and to try and look at our day as God would. This leads us to step 3, review. The article simply says we examine our day, or whatever period of time we're doing the examen over. I like to think of this like watching the day like a movie in your mind, wearing those God glasses. Maybe you can think of it like a 3D movie where you have to put the glasses on to see the film in all its glory. I also put a cell phone here because I know that that's how most of you see movies rather than this first picture. But the idea is you go back through your day and you remember all the things you did, that you said, the people you interacted with, how you felt about things. And you try to just kind of go through the day, seeing and feeling things as they happened, while wearing those God glasses, so trying to fairly review the day without being too hard or too easy on yourself. This is the main part of the examen. This leads us into the 4th part, repent. We know none of us are perfect, so that means that in any given day, we're probably going to find something that we've done or said that we're not proud of, that we wish we hadn't done, or that we need to repent for. Now, I take a little bit of offense might be too harsh of a word, but I don't like the way the article words this one. It tells us to beg for God's mercy. I think that God is more approachable than that. So I like the wording more of saying we admit, we apologize, and we ask. Thinking of those 3 A's to remember all 3 steps there. So we admit where we messed up. We apologize for where we messed up. And we ask for forgiveness. I've got 2 sort of saying I'm sorry here, both with the sign language, but also with a heart here, because it needs to be sincere. And that's why there's 3 parts here. Admitting where we're wrong comes from looking at our day honestly, being able to admit where we've done the wrong thing. Apologizing, that comes with that sincerity, being able to see where we've gone wrong and attempt to set things right. And finally, asking forgiveness, that also flows from the apology and trying to right any of the wrongs we've done that day. And this takes us to our final step, which is resolve. And I've put action both in parentheses here and in both of my images, because action is key to this step. I would say in order to get full credit on this final step, you would need to mention the word action somewhere. The article calls this what comes next. I call it the action step. What will I do the same or different as a result of this reflection? It's a reminder that the examen never really ends, because the purpose is, once we've done this reflecting, we want to make sure that it extends out into the rest of our day, into the rest of our life. Now, if we're looking at something where we've made a mistake, we might need to make a change in what we're doing. However, maybe we found something we did really well, and we want to continue to do that. Maybe someone dropped their books in the hallway and you helped them pick them up and you realized that felt good and that was a good thing to do. So maybe you'll repeat that. Or maybe you said something inappropriate to someone else. You were trying to make a joke, but then you realized it was inappropriate. And so maybe coming out of this, you realize you owe an apology to that person and you're not going to tell those kind of jokes again. This is the final step of the examen, and can extend out really the rest of your life depending on what that action is. Now I have a bonus slide here. This is going to be found at the very bottom of your Ignatian spirituality questions. I said we'd talk about this in class. And this is the term Ignatian indifference. In general, the term indifference usually means apathy, a lack of caring. Ignatian indifference is different. It means, and this definition I'm about to give you came from a former student, and I was so impressed by it that I used this definition over all the fancy theological definitions. And that is to keep your mind open to all possibilities as you go through an experience. Another way we can look at this, in fact, a way that Ignatius uses in his Principle and Foundation, is the belief that everything has the potential to lead us closer to God. Some things are really obvious when they happen. Maybe a sacrament, or being out in nature, or going to church. Others maybe not as obvious. Sometimes people will go through an illness, and while the illness itself was a difficult process they may never want to repeat, they might have gotten closer to God through that illness. That was certainly the case with Ignatius. In his life, it was after he was injured, when he was poor, when he wasn't looked at as having the honor and glory that the world said he needed, that he got closer to God. That's the end of this PowerPoint video. Thank you for watching, and feel free to bring any questions with you to class. Thank you.